him. And afterwards, I asked Bob if he had ever thought about running for office. And I got an emphatic no. I wouldn't do that to my family. And, I understood. So I was somewhat surprised when I heard earlier this year that he was actually throwing in his hat for running for president. Very ecstatic. And then I thought about it, and I thought, this really is not a contradiction of his previous position. It's just he's further down the road in his life's journey that has brought him to this place today. When Bobby was growing up as a little boy, he was taught by his family that he would be consumed by a battle of good and evil that would take place here on earth. And that if he were chosen to play a role in that battle, he would do so despite what the consequences might be. And he would do so with gratitude to be able to have an opportunity to serve. And that is how he has lived his life. And he is ready to serve. And I just want to tell you, if you give this man a piece of ground and a sword, he will take back this country. So,
Union Square is like the Fifth Avenue of San Francisco. It's where all the big stores are. So it has all the iconic American stores like Macy's, predominantly Gucci, Hermes, Ferragamo, Burberry, etc. And people come from all over the world to go shopping in Union Square. Let's say like they come to Fifth Avenue. Well, I went back there 2.5 weeks ago, and every one of those stores is closed. So it's just acre after acre of plywood, and it's shocking. San Francisco is collapsing. And the reason they laugh is because of the homeless population, which is now taken over the streets, and it's causing this chaos. Nobody wants to go there to shop. And so I felt almost traumatized by seeing the city that I love being gutted in this way. And I started researching the causes of homelessness. And my assumption going in was that homelessness was related to drug addiction, and it was related to mental illness, to extreme poverty, that a lot of homeless people were drawn to California. If you went homeless in New York, you didn't want to sleep in the snow and the grates, you would go to California where in San Francisco they have a very welcoming social service system. And I also heard that there are cities like Austin and Dallas where if the police pick up a homeless person, rather than putting them in jail, they give them a Greyhound ticket to San Francisco one way. And so I heard all these things, and these were the assumptions, but I began researching it. And my son introduced me to a writer researcher named Matthew Tesman, who's written the definitive works on homelessness, and he works with a team of researchers at the University of San Francisco. And they've gone out and tried to interview every homeless person in San Francisco. And one of the things we found out was that the people who are homeless in San Francisco come from San Francisco. They did not come from outside. The other thing it shows in this book is that there are cities and states with far higher drug addiction problems, like Detroit, like West Virginia, and higher levels of poverty. San Francisco is one of the richest cities in our country and one of the most generous. And so it doesn't, all of those reasons don't explain the homelessness. And in California, we have 525,000 homeless people in this country. Half of the unsheltered homeless are in California. California only has 12% of the population. So how did this happen? And what Desmond shows is that homelessness is a direct function of one thing: the price of housing. And California has the highest cost housing. And what Desmond shows is that epidemic that is now happening in California about to form a tsunami that is going to roll across our country and create the same kind of chaos in every community. And the reason is because the dramatic uprise in housing prices in this country. 2 years ago, the average price of a home in our country was $215,000. Today it's $400,000. And the interest rates have gone from 3% to 7%. So that house is actually costing you 4 or 5 times what it did 2 years ago, and you still couldn't afford it then. I have 7 children. The oldest one's 39, and he owns a house. The other one's between 20 and 32, and none of them are thinking of buying a house. It's completely out of reach for them. And I think that's true for most families across the country. When I was their age, myself and all my friends were at least strategizing about how we would one day own a home. I came up in a generation where the American dream, the promise of the American dream was that if you worked hard, if you played by the rules, that you would be able to finance a home, that you would be able to take a summer vacation, that you would be able to raise a family and then retire on one job. And for my kids' generation, that promise is a broken promise. There's none of them that believe in that anymore. And why are the housing prices rising so dramatically? 24 trillion. We didn't pay for that in taxes, so they just printed the money. And they're taxing us through a stealth route, which is called inflation. So they're high for our health care going up, our food's going up, our child care is going up, everything. But housing is going up much faster than anything. Why is it? Here's why. There's 3 giant corporations: BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. And those corporations collectively own each other. So it's really just one corporation. And they already own 88% of the S&P 500. So they own 88% of the stock market. And now they've decided that they are going to own all the single-family homes in our country and all the farmland. And so all of us have stories of people who are about to put money down in the house, or about to go into escrow or sign a contract, and at the last minute, somebody comes in with a cash offer and takes that house off the market. And then you look to see who it is, and it's a LLC with an ambiguous name. And if you follow the breadcrumbs, that leads you back to BlackRock. Now, BlackRock is the biggest company in the world. It's got $10 trillion under management. That makes it the 3rd biggest economy on Earth after China and Russia. The economy of California is $3 trillion. The GDP is $3 trillion. And that's the 5th largest economy in the world. So this is 3 times the state of California. The CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink, also sits on the World Economic Forum. And the World Economic Forum, of course, meets every year at the Billionaires Boys Club in Davos to plan what the world is going to look like for the rest of us. And they call their Great Reset. They call their plan the Great Reset. And Klaus Schwab, who's the director of the World Economic Forum, has explained that the Great Reset means that you will own nothing, but you will be happy. And they're on their way to achieving at least the first part. Hello, at least the first part of that promise. Oh, and what happens if they succeed in getting all the house they're on? Right now, we're on track with 60% of the homes in this country will be owned by corporations within 6 years. So what does that mean? What it means is that your child, when they go out to try to buy a home, are competing against BlackRock. And BlackRock has a credit rating. It pays the cost of money to BlackRock is about 30% lower than the person with the best credit rating in this country. BlackRock pays lower for them than anything. And your child has to compete against them for that home. The cost of that home is far less to them than it is to your child. So, what does our country look like? Well, we become, instead of a nation of owners, we become a nation of renters. Why is it important that we own our own homes? A bunch of reasons. One is, if you own your home, you care about your community. You care about your school. You care about your hospital. You care about your police. You care about your neighbors. You want to keep your home looking right. You care about your community. The other reason is that home gives you equity so that you can borrow money. If you have equity, you are part of the capitalist system. If you want to start a business, you can, even a small business like buying a sewing machine, but you have the money to do that. And if you want to start a bigger business like a restaurant or retail outlet, you can bet the farm on it. You can pay your house, get a second mortgage, and you can do it. And it allows you to participate if you have an entrepreneurial impulse in the capitalist system. And if we don't have access to capital, no matter how smart or ambitious you are, you have almost no chance of participating. And after World War II, there was a 50-year period called the economists and social scientists all the great prosperity. Our country became the richest country on earth. When I was a little boy, my uncle was president. We owned half the wealth on the face of the earth. And the way that that started is after World War II, we got every American into a home that wanted one, but the GI Bill and a bunch of other bills that made home ownership easy. And that launched the American middle class as the greatest economic engine in the history of mankind. We were the greatest exporter in the world until 1975. Some years we exported more than all the other nations combined. Oh, what happens when we lose that? Thomas Jefferson said that American democracy is rooted in the ownership of land by tens of thousands of independent American individuals and families, each with a stake in our economic system and our system of government. And when we lose equity, we lose our capacity to participate in the capitalist system. So, I'm running against two presidents right now, both serve the term and are running on the basis that they have brought prosperity to our country, extraordinary prosperity. And, you know, I spend a lot of time talking to regular Americans. Long before I decided to run for president, because my job was suing big corporate polluters and representing thousands of people. Right today, I'm representing 1,000 families in Columbiana County, Ohio, whose lives were upended by the Norfolk Southern Railroad. I represent people until very recently, till we settled the case, 10,000 families in Ohio and West Virginia who were poisoned by PFOAs from DuPont's plant and another 10,000 poisoned by a smelter plant. And of course, 40,000 families who were poisoned by Roundup got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Oh, I end up spending a lot of my time sitting at kitchen tables with people and talking to them about their lives. And when they hear how we are right now living through an unprecedented prosperity brought upon us by these two presidents, they feel like they're being gaslighted. The average income in this country today is $5,000 less than the cost of basic human needs, of food, transportation, and housing. That means that if you live just a basic life, then you're going to end up $5,000 in debt at the end of the year. So how are Americans paying that debt? They're putting out their credit cards. 2 weeks ago, we passed an enormous monumental threshold, $1 trillion in individual credit card debt. It's going up in 3 years, $330 billion. It's rising exponentially. And they're paying, Americans who are bearing that burden are paying 22% interest for that debt. The Visa, MasterCard, Wells Fargo, Citibank, Chase, Morgan. If the mafia charged that, it would be called loan sharking and legal imprisonment. But for those companies, it's just business as usual. And who do you think owns every one of those companies? Oh, and I see people, who are sitting at these kitchen tables talking about their parents, elderly parents, who are cutting up their drug prescriptions, cutting the pills in two to stretch them out for the week so they can pay for food. I talked to a kid the other day who says 1 day a week he has to make a decision about whether to have dinner or to buy gasoline for his car. I talked to people who are choosing between home heating and food, or gasoline and food, pharmaceuticals. A young couple living in an apartment they can no longer afford, with a baby crying in their lap, and arguing with each other, trying to decide whether that baby is $50 sick, or $100 sick, or $500 sick, before they they bring them to a hospital. These are decisions and choices that I never imagined that Americans would make. There's 57% of the people in this country cannot put their hands on $1,000 if they have an emergency. If you're in that category and the engine light goes on in your car, it is the apocalypse. It's the end of the world. Because you can see yourself circling the train. You know you can't pay for that mechanic. The car, you're going to lose your car, you can't get to work, and now you're going to lose your home. And you're going to end up in the street like those people in San Francisco, who were not crazy when they started out. They just had a string of bad luck. They saw the engine light go on in their car, and they're now living on the street. That's what happened. And yeah, when you live on the street for 3 days, you start to go crazy. So yeah, there's a lot of mental illness, and there's a lot of drug addiction. But it was bad luck, and this economy, this orchestrated theft of our resources, of our equity, and our wealth in this country, that put them there. You know what it's like when the gauge on the gas station in your car is on empty, and you know how that focuses your mind, how you can't think of anything else. Am I able to get to that gas station? And it makes you stupid. You can't think. You lose IQ because you can't think of anything else. Now, amplify your anxiety by putting 2 kids in the back of your car. And now amplify it more when you're driving through a bad neighborhood. That's the way that half of people in our country wake up every day. We're living from paycheck to paycheck. And they don't know how they're going to make it. They're living with a sense, they wake up with a sense of impending doom. This was, and you're seeing this disintegration in mental health, in physical health, our economy, our communities, our bonds with each other are all systematically being attacked. We're being mass poisoned and mass propagandized at the same time. And Americans know it, and they have an uneasy feeling that it's all being manipulated, and that something is rigged against them. I saw a president, let me say this, I grew up in this time during the Great Prosperity, when we had this extraordinary wealth, and everybody wanted what we had. When I traveled abroad with my dad and my mother, strangers would come up to me and ask me to buy my blue jeans. People wanted American transistor radios. They wanted RCA controllers, which we made. Our cars were the gold standard of the world. More than anything else, they wanted our leadership in this country. They looked at us as the moral authority of the world, and they wanted us to be an example of democracy and of morality. I saw President Biden in Hawaii the other day on 9/11, the anniversary, and he made a statement that kind of shocked me, because a Democrat 10 years ago would never have said this. But he said, the reason they bombed the World Trade Center is because they hate us for our freedoms. That's what George Bush said in 2002. And the next day I went on Neil Cavuto and I said, that's propaganda. They didn't bomb the World Trade Center because they hate us for our freedoms. Osama bin Laden was very outspoken about why he bombed the World Trade Center. He bombed the World Trade Center because we put 2 military bases right next to Mecca. And we have 800 bases around the world taking fights with people. Osama bin Laden said, I used to love the United States. I didn't hate them for their freedoms. They were my allies in Afghanistan getting the Russians out. We financed them. We gave them weapons. We fought side by side with them. But we put the bases in Mecca, and that turned him against us. It wasn't our freedom. So why are they telling us this? In 1964, I went to Poland with my dad, and my mom, 3 of my brothers and sisters. Poland then was a communist country, and they didn't want us there. They made it very clear. My father was invited by a human rights organizer, and the Polish government disinvited us and asked us not to come. We went anyway. And they blacked out any news of our presence in the country in all the state-owned media, because they didn't want the Polish people to know we were there. In fact, before we left, my mother took us shopping in Washington, D.C., and we bought clothing and toys and all this American stuff to give to the kids in Poland. So we were really, the kids, me and three of my siblings, were really excited about going and giving these gifts to children. When we arrived at the orphanage, the postman had removed all the children because they didn't want them to have contact with Americans. 2 days later, we went to Krakow to visit the Cathedral of Atlanta. The cardinal was a living saint. He had stood up to the communists, he had been tortured, he had been in jail, and he endured that suffering with a piety and a dignity that had inspired a religious resurgence, revival in the Catholic Church in Poland. And everybody knew that when he died, he was going to be beatified by the church as a saint. So for us, little Catholic kids, 4 little Catholic kids, it was the greatest thrill of our lives that we were going to get to be a real saint. When we went up the street, up the steps of the cathedral, we had passed through Krakow Square, which was one of the biggest squares in Europe. It looked like a mile long. And it was dead empty. Nobody there but us. When we came out of the cathedral, 3.5 hours later, there was 1 million people waiting for us. The word of our presence had spread by word of mouth. And the entire city had emptied out to come see us. And our embassy limousine was trapped in a sea of humanity. And could not move. And we were there for probably 3.5 hours. We went up, we climbed up on the roof of the car. My father dragged us up through the window, and we stood up there and just watched these crowds. My father gave a speech. And then the crowd started singing Snowlight, which means may you live forever. And then they started singing an anthem, which is a nationalist anthem from World War II. From the anti-communist movement during World War II, and it was illegal to sing it at the time. And they sang it again and again and again and again to us. And I was this little 11-year-old kid standing up there signing autographs all day and watching people with tears flowing down their faces and this electricity of the crowd that just wanted to be near an American leader. And on that trip, we went to Greece, Italy, Germany, France, and England, and everywhere it was the same thing. They did not hate us for our freedoms. They loved us for our freedoms. They wanted to. And they loved us particularly because my uncle, who had died 8 months earlier, had kept the country, had made a strategic decision that America during his administration would project economic power abroad and not military power. And he had kept us out of the wars. He had told his best friend Ben Bradley, he asked my uncle, what do you want as your epitaph on your gravestone? And my uncle told him, he kept the peace. He said the primary job of a president of the United States is to keep the country out of war. To think of a man in a uniform with a gun. He wanted them to think of a Peace Corps volunteer. He wanted them to think of the Kennedy Milk Program, which gave nutrition to millions of malnourished kids around the world. He wanted them to think of the Alliance for Progress, the USAID, which he created both of those, to give aid directly to the poor, to put America on the side of the poor, trying to construct middle class, to end run the oligarchs, the military hunt us, and build the independent middle classes in countries all over the world with our aid. And my uncle, 3 days before he took office, President Eisenhower gave us, today we recognize the most important speech in American history, where he warned our country against the domination, the emergence and domination of the military-industrial complex that would turn us into transform America, the exemplary democracy of the world, from an exemplary democracy into an imperial CIA and a military brass had lied to him. And he took blame for the catastrophe. But he privately said to his aides, I'm going to take the CIA and shatter it into 1,000 pieces. He fired the counter-organized the CIA, Charles Cabell, Richard Pistol, and of course Alan Dulles, who then weirdly ends up on the Warren Commission 3.5 years later, running the Warren Commission. But my uncle, Eisenhower had made this money. My uncle spent 3 years. He never sent a combat troop. He resisted all of the important platoons that he sent troops to Laos in 61, to Cuba in 61, to Cuba in 62, to Berlin in 62, and to Vietnam. His top military aides, including the people he most trusted, Eiffel Harriman and Bob Maxwell, and General Maxwell Taylor, all told, you need to send 250,000 troops over or the government's going to collapse. And he said, it's their government. It's their war. We can support them, but we can't fight it for them. We can't make it. He ended up sending 16,000 advisors to Vietnam. Mainly Green Berets. They weren't on the rules of engagement allowed to participate in combat, but some of them did. And on October 22nd, 1963, he heard that a Green Beret had died in Vietnam. He asked Walt Rostow, one of his aides, for a casualty list. That afternoon, Walt Rostow gave him a list. 75 men, American men, had died in Vietnam. And he said, that is too many. That afternoon, he signed National Security Order 263, ordering all troops, all American personnel, home from Vietnam by 1965, with the first 1,000 coming home the following month in December of 63. 30 days after he signed that order, he was assassinated. A week later, President Johnson remanded that order and sent 250,000 troops over there. And it became an American war. My father ran against that war in 68 and was killed. Martin Luther King, 2 months earlier, now a peace activist, was killed fighting against that war because he saw the link. Many of the other civil rights leaders complained and said to King, you need to stay in our lane. Don't get involved with the war. Just stick on civil rights. He said, you can't separate. If we are bringing violence, everybody is going to come home. And the Vietnam War has destroyed the poverty program. It's drained it of all its money, and it's going to drain the middle class, and it's going to impoverish anybody who's not wealthy ultimately. We have to end America as an empire nation. And he was killed in April. My dad was killed in June. These were the traumas. My uncle's death, my father's death, Martin Luther King's death, the Vietnam War, 9/11 and COVID that pushed us farther and farther down that road against which Eisenhower warned us. I want to say this about COVID. During COVID, they closed 3.3 million businesses. So, and they left open, of course, Amazon. Well, they trained us for 3 years how to shop at Amazon. Amazon got to close all its competitors. And Amazon, I had a book out with John Mercola, not the Fauci book, another one that we wrote, talking about the lockdowns and how bad they were for public health and the economy. And Amazon censored that book. They were censoring complaints about the policies that were closing their competitors and amplifying their billions. And so, Amazon ended up being the winner, along with Facebook and a couple others, in the billionaire race, and the local retailers in DeKalb County and the counties around here, they all got closed down. 41% of the guy who employed your son and your daughter during the summer months. He's the guy who had the plaque from the Boy Scouts on his wall thanking him for supporting the local troop. He's the guy who paid for your kids' hockey jerseys and their Little League uniforms. He's gone now. But at least Amazon is here. You know, we all got the Amazon. I never used Amazon before the pandemic. My kids had to show me how to do it. And I just imagine it's the most wonderful thing. You find a picture of something you want and you press a button and it's in your driveway the next day. Oh, of course it's seductive. But that one, there was a cost to it. We lost that local person who was part of our community. And, but at least we have the concession. And Amazon is paying taxes locally here, right? Yeah, no, they're not. But at least they're paying federal taxes. You know how much they paid last year? 0. So they're doing it right in front of us. They are just strip mining the wealth from the American people. They're strip mining our equity. They're controlling the government. They're rigging the whole system, including the electoral system against us. And they turn the regulatory agencies into predators against the American people. And, you know, we're now in this new war, $113 billion that they committed in March, last March, to Ukraine. And then, when Zelensky came to town 2 weeks ago, they committed another $24 billion, and I agreed to it, and the Democrats and Republicans, the leadership all agreed to it. They said, even if we lock down the government, we'll make sure that's the one thing that's going to be exact. We're going to make sure that President Zelensky gets his money. So, just for a frame of reference, the annual budget for EPA is $12 billion. That's all we got for the environment in this country. That's it, $12 billion. We're giving 12 times that to Ukraine in 1 year. And this, by the way, they acknowledge we're going to have to do this every year. $12 billion. The entire budget for CDC is $12 billion. Now, EPA and CDC don't spend that money that well. I'll change that. But that's all we got for public health. That's all we got for the environment. We're giving 24 times that. And by the way, the same month that we made that commitment, we got food stamps for 30 million Americans from $283 a month to $23 a month. You try to eat on $23 a month and see what you get. And we got 30 million Americans from Medicare bills. The same month, the Fed printed $300 billion unanticipated dollars to bail out the Silicon Valley Bank. Twice what we gave to Ukraine. So we got a lot of money, all they want when the bankers need it, and when the military industrial complex needs it. But when Americans are starving, when they don't have enough to eat, I know so many people who are changing their ingredients, switching out ingredients so they can make it through the checkout line. Who are down to eating. I have a buddy who texted me the other day that he's down to 1 meal a day. He's one of the people that got cut from Medicare. He's on disability. He's a commercial fisherman. Worked his whole life. He's on disability. He cannot work. And he's in the group that they cut that 30 that he's got $23 a month to feed himself. So, and meanwhile, anything they want in Ukraine, they're getting. A war that should have never happened, that the Russians tried twice. Which Obama was asked by the reporter, national TV, can we really afford to give $113 billion to Ukraine? And he said, well, don't worry, it's not really going to Ukraine. It's all going to U.S. military contractors. To Raytheon, General Dynamics, Boeing, and Lockheed. So he just admitted it's all a money laundering scheme for the people that Eisenhower warned us against. And who do you think besides that Tim Scott can say that it's a loan, it's not a gift. The reason they call it a loan is because if you make it a loan, you can impose conditions on Ukraine, which they did. Those conditions are, of course, rigid, brutal, savage austerity programs for anybody who happens to be poor in Ukraine. So they never get anything from the government. But more importantly, we've required Ukraine to sell all of its assets. So its ports, its roads, its airports, all these kind of things. The kind of government assets that a government has. Most importantly, all of its farmland. Ukraine is the richest farmland on earth. It is the breadbasket of the earth. There have been wars for 1,000 years fought over control of that farmland. People say that the Ukraine farmland is so rich that if you throw an old boot on it, something will grow that people can eat. And everybody wants that farmland. And what we've said, you gotta sell that farmland. So we forced them to create a land bank where all that farmland now is going to go in the auction. And 28% of it has already been sold. Namely to Monsanto, Bayer, and a number of other companies, all of which are ultimately owned by Gesso. So yeah, they're going to own everything. They're going to own everything. They're going to control our food. They're going to control our housing. We're going to become renters. And when you become renters, you are no longer citizens. You are subjects. This is a colonial model. It is a feudal model. It's the model that we fought the American Revolution to get away from. There's a lot of people who run for office and say that they're going to train the swamp. But they get into office and they don't know how to do it.
Right.
And they get old by their bureaucracy. And they get frightened because they encounter these big bureaucracies, 30,000 people. And a lot of the upper level people can commit civil disobediences to embarrass the president. So they just decide, okay, I'm not going to do that. I talked to Mike Pompeo the other day. I never met him before. I always didn't like him, but I actually found him very likable in this conversation. He said something to me, and I only met him talking for a few minutes. I had a dinner with him and a couple of other people. And he said to me, when I was at the CIA, I had an opportunity to clean up that agency, and my biggest regret is that I did nothing to do it. And then he turned to me and he said, the entire upper echelon of management at that agency is made up of people who do not believe in the democratic institutions of our country. And he had the chance, but he didn't do it. And President Trump came in and I think he intended to clean up the swamp, but he brought John Bolton in to run MSA. That's not cleaning up the swamp. And he put Alex Azar, who's a pharmaceutical lobbyist, in to run HHS, and put Scott Gottlieb, who was a pharmacist, who was a Pfizer business partner, in charge of FDA. And Gottlieb did an $88 billion favor for Pfizer, and then left to go back to Pfizer board. No, it's not trading as well. They don't know how to do it. And they're intimidated by these agencies. I know how to do it. doing it because I know I can change this country and bring it back. The way they keep us from actually doing anything is they have us all fighting each other. So they protect against whites, and they turn, or against immigrants or trans or whatever. Republicans against Democrats, they keep us all at each other's throats. And, I saw them on that debate the other night, and they were all talking about these issues that are like 40 years old. I'm going to be tough on trans, I'm going to be tough on women, or on abortions, I'm going to be tough on Mexico. I'm going to be tough on Russia, I'm going to be tough on China. That's what they were selling. None of them mentioned black power. None of them mentioned the housing costs. None of them mentioned any of these things. The things that are really important, and it's like the jangling keys. They keep saying, look at these keys over here, and they're robbing the bank over here. And the king and queen look out from the balustrades of their castle. At the big landscapes of their country, they see their subjects all fighting each other. They go back to the party and they pop champagne. Because as long as those people are fighting each other, they're not coming up the wall. And what I'm doing with this campaign is to put the people in stop the fight and let's go over the wall. The DNC has been, trying to rig the process against me in the party. They did the same thing to Bernie Sanders because or to Tulsi, because a progressive candidate is, they're owned by the same people that own Republicans. It's the same corporations, the BlackRocks, etc. And they don't want a president. They'd rather have Trump as president than have somebody offend their corporate donors. Because either way, the donors are going to give them the money if Trump's president. They're not going to give them the money if I'm their candidate. And, they thought Bernie was dangerous and Tulsi was dangerous. I'm 10 times more dangerous than Bernie. I've been suing these agencies for 40 years. I've sued almost every one of them. I've sued DOT, I've sued the USDA, I've sued FCC recently, successfully on cell phones. I've sued NIH, CDC, FDA, PhD, corporate capture. You know who the individuals are. You understand the perverse incentive systems that doom us in generations of corporate capture, and you start to think about how to unravel them. I have a PhD in how to unravel corporate capture of these agencies, and I am excited about doing it. If you put me in there, I'm going to give you there's so many people with Kennedy t-shirts here. Wear the shirt. Put a sticker on your door, whatever you can do to start the conversation, because that's what we're going to do, need to do if we're going to get our country back and be able to give it to our children rather than just be working like have them spend their lives working like slaves, serfs on their own land, renting property from BlackRock and giving and paying taxes to BlackRock. That's where we're going to end up. Give me your help. I said in my announcement speech, you give me a sword, some ground to stand on, I'm going to get your country back. Thank you. Hello. What? And we're going to do, after we do quick notes, I'm going to take selfies with anybody here who wants to take one. We did 600 people in Charleston about 2 weeks ago. Quick conversation, but you have to keep moving. You have to hand it to the 2 people who are going to be trading, take them, and we'll do it really, really fast. Hello. That's the question. Yeah, the question is about the WHO pandemic treaty, which I will immediately not allow, and I will, don't Joe used to do was beneficial, which is that they supported local health clinics in places around the world that had no. It was very important. Today, when you tell you know where WHO today has become the instrument of the pharmaceutical industry and also of China. And this proposal to do a pandemic treaty is a sinister. I will allow the treaty to happen, but I'm also going to change WHO's policy. I'm going to say, unless you do what you're actually supposed to do, which is to serve public health rather than the mercantile interests of the pharmaceutical industry. I'm very sorry. I don't think, so let's just do that.